Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have, amid community outcry, ICE releases statement on arrest of NJ restaurant owners from NBCnews.com, posted by Ninja Lover. And, personally, I don't really care for any of the free letter agencies, and that includes ICE. I think they're innately authoritarian, even if, a lot of the people they might be deporting are people who probably deserve it, like thugs and murderers. But even then, they're just the same thing as the rest of them, pretty much, like the ATF, FBI, CIA, and that they just use the force of the government against pretty much anyone they can justify using it against, and ultimately there's no one who can stop them. Well, because if you use force against them, it's illegal. But since they're the government, they have the legal monopoly on the use of force. So yeah, I personally don't really care for ICE, and yeah, this just goes to show you how they can ultimately arrest, detain, and deport anyone who they feel like, even if those people might be citizens. Then we have Treasury ends enforcement of business ownership database meant to stop shell company formation from NBCnews.com, posted by LegioX. And yeah, I personally don't think we should have government databases in it at all. So I personally think this is kind of good from a libertarian perspective. I personally don't. I think a lot of funneling your money into a shell company is something that I personally think is unethical. But people are going to justify what they want to justify. So I don't think if the government should be telling private companies what they can and can't do. I think that's the job of the people rather than the state. Then we have White House seeks plan for possible Russia sanctions relief. Sources say no sign of getting anything in return. And that was from Reuters.com by Baton13. And of course, Reddit always loves to go Russia, Russia, Russia. As I said before, it's like the South Park movie, only instead of blame Canada, it's blame Russia. And yeah, Reddit's always going to say, oh, look how favorably Trump's treating Russia. I don't really care for Russia, but if it was up to Reddit and a lot of the shit libs who are basically neocons at this point, we'd be in World War III with Russia. So ultimately, I don't think you should be up Russia's ass, but I don't think you should want World War III with them either. And that doesn't mean I care for Putin. I wish the Russian people would get Putin out of there, but still, it's not the job of the U.S. to tell Russians what to do with their government. It's up to the people of each country to deal with their own government. Then we have protests are illegal in Trump's America from CH4Locks, and that's a cross post from the Ukraine subreddit. Here are your dictatorship laws by comparison with Ukraine in 2014, where the parliament enacted draconian measures on January 16th, 1.5 months after wide-scale protests began. This is your last call, America. And that's just true from Donald Trump. All federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. Agitators will be imprisoned and or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And yeah, I personally think, you shouldn't be declaring protests you don't like to be illegal. And yeah, I personally think this is one of Trump's more authoritarian positions, and yeah, I personally don't really care for it. But with that being said, Reddit only cares for it because Trump's a member of the out group rather than the in group. When a member of the in group does something like this, Reddit says, oh, it's completely justified. It's like when Justin Trudeau enacted the Emergencies Act against the Canadian trucker convoy. Reddit was on like, oh, this is entirely justified since, Justin Trudeau is a progressive member of the in-group rather than the out-group. And that just goes to show you how, I'm sure if this was Bernie Sanders tweeting about how we gotta make any MAGA protests illegal, then Reddit would be all over it saying it's the greatest thing ever. But since it's the orange man, it's suddenly the worst thing ever. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Census Bureau under Trump seeks permission to delete questions about gender identity from Ground News posted by Doctor Who 07. And Yeah, personally, I think that's a good idea. I don't think the government should be getting involved in gender identity at all. Personally, I don't think the government should be having a census at all. Because that's just another thing for the government to get its grimy fingers all over. So overall, to me, we don't have a census, yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, I personally would agree with that. But Reddit's gonna say I think it's the worst thing ever because the Orange Man is doing it rather than the Democrats. And so yeah, I personally think this is a good position. Then we have Trudeau. I want to speak first directly to the American people. Your government has chosen to do this to you. Your government has chosen to put American jobs at risk. They have chosen to raise costs for American consumers on everyday essential items. From Doctor Who 07, that's across was from the pop culture subreddit. And yeah, personally, I don't really care for terrorists. But with that being said, Justin Trudeau is, as I said earlier, he declared pretty much martial law against the Canadian trucker protest back in 2022. So he's not a friend of liberty either, I would say. Then we have Republicans avoid voters, posted by Donald Key, and that's a cross post from the Clever Comeback subreddit. And that's a tweet from Politico. No more town halls, and RCC chief tells House Republicans. And Tim Walz replies, "That's a shame. If your Republican representative won't meet with you because their agenda is so unpopular, maybe a Democrat will. Hell, maybe I will. If your congressman refuses to meet, I'll come host an event in their district to help local Democrats beat them." And yeah, that's just more DNC propaganda gobbledygook. That's pretty much all of the Reddit at this point. It's like 90% of subreddits at this point are just DNC propaganda gobbledygook that might as well be taking money directly from the DNC. But yeah, if Tim Walz wants to back himself up on that and actually does host events in districts where the Republicans aren't holding town halls, I think that would be a good idea. But I personally think it's probably just social media slacktivism rather than, and I don't think he's actually going to go through with it. Then we have Why TechDirt is Now a Democracy blog, whether we like it or not, from TechDirt.com, posted by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I never really got too into TechDirt, but yeah, it seems like they're pretty much typical Reddit shitlibs. They didn't care at all about government authoritarianism for during the course of the Biden administration, but the second the Orange Man gets back in there, suddenly it's the authoritarians have taken over. We need to defend our rights. And yeah, it just goes to show you how I won't be surprised if the Democrat wins in 2028 that they won't make a post like this. But since the Republicans are in power, suddenly they have to say, "Oh, we got to stand up and fight for democracy." It's just a bunch of that's social media for you. It's just a bunch of phonies who think, "Oh, we're fighting for liberty," but they're only care about liberty when their party's out of power. And that just goes to show you how you gotta stand up and fight for liberty, regardless of which branch of the Uniparty is in power. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Representative Al Green protest during President Trump's joint address to Congress before being escorted out, from Donald Key, and that's a cross post from the Pix subreddit. And yeah, I personally, don't think you should be being as insufferable as possible during a speech or any of that. But this is preferable what the other Democrats were doing by just holding signs up. That was kind of cringy, and even DNC AstroTurf Reddit kind of agrees with that. So yeah, ultimately, if he wants to use his free speech and yell at the president, I think he should be able to. But if he does get escorted out, that's sometimes what you risk. If you're being overly obnoxious, sometimes you do get kicked out of places, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have poll on Trump's 2025 joint address to Congress finds large majority of viewers, 76% approve, from CBSNews.com, posted by Color Monochrome. And yeah, that just goes to show you how, Reddit might think it's it's the real world, but Reddit isn't really the real world. I'm sure if Reddit was asked, it'll be like 95% of Redditors disapprove, think Trump and all his supporters should be executed. But in the real world, people have increasingly grown to like Trump. It's why his vote total and vote percentage of the vote raised each subsequent time he ran, and he pretty much had the worst year a president could have in 2020, an incumbent president, and his vote total and percentage of the vote still went up. So people might say, oh, Trump's the worst thing ever. But increasingly people are seeing through the legacy media's propaganda against him, and they've grown to realize that he's arguably the lesser of two evils. With that being said, I personally still don't think he's libertarian, and the lesser of two evils is still an evil. But increasingly people are seeing propaganda for what it is, and that's why the progressives increasingly want to clamp down on social media and say stuff like, "Oh, I support free speech, just not for misinformation and hate speech." And they would say anything they don't like is misinformation or hate speech. Like if you post biological male participating in women's sports, they take that down because they don't want you to see stuff like that because it goes against their narratives that says, oh, these cases are few and far between. We gotta support trans women's right to play in women's sports if they want to. And yeah, that's why people are seeing through their smoke and mirrors, and I think that's pretty good from a libertarian perspective personally. Then we have Trump says the U.S. will take control of Greenland one way or the other from CNBC.com by Legio X. And yeah, I personally think that Greenland stuff and all those that kind of neo-imperial stuff that Trump says is kind of stupid. But you can't expect to agree with someone 100% of the time. I personally think if Trump were smart, he'd probably stop spazzing out about Greenland all the time. But the spazzery and the hingedness are just general factors of Trump at this point. And if you haven't recognized that over the past decade, you might as well just have your head in the sand. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.